So great to be with all of you this morning. I know it can really depend on the time zone, how camera ready you feel, and it may not be logistically possible, but if it is possible just to come on camera for a little while as we get started, it's really nice to see more faces and connect with more folks. Hi, good to see you. Thank you. I see some of those cameras coming on. Fantastic. So my name is Maggie Williams, as Salonis mentioned. I have been with Strozzi Institute since 2011, first coming in very much as a student and then transitioning to their teacher training program and becoming a teacher. I used to spend most of my time when I wasn't teaching or in the dojo or doing Strozzi Somatics. I used to spend most of my time running an organization that helped social justice organizations with their legislative campaigns. So I was very focused on how to help grassroots organizations win legislative campaigns here in New York. And since over the past couple of years, both partially due to COVID, but even pre-COVID, I really transitioned from my non-somatics time, really being more focused on family. So I live in Brooklyn, and I have a 3-year-old and a 10-month-old. Yes, is that your hometown, Salonis? It is, right? Yeah. So I spend the bulk of my time when not teaching Strozzi Somatics, really focusing on parenting and trying to bring as much intention as I can to that process, which is really a challenge. So if there are folks who are longer in the road of parenting, I'm always open to hearing from your wisdom. So what we're gonna do this morning is we're gonna spend some time together. We're gonna start off almost immediately in the next couple of minutes with some opening practices, which I'm sure many of you are familiar with. If you're new to Strozzi, this will be your first time getting into some of our most foundational practices. We do them all the time, things like centering and rowing and gratitude. And then we're going to spend a little time talking about the theory of these 3 building blocks of somatic awareness, somatic practice, and somatic opening. And these are really fundamental pieces of almost every practice we do. I mean, I would say actually every practice, not almost. We can find them in every practice that we do. And they are a really big part of, I think, what makes our work in this lineage so effective. And they're a really big part of this arc of transformation that we all want to be in as we move towards aligning our actions with our actual values and what we care about most. And these 3 components, these building blocks, are a really key part of that. And then after we spend a little time talking about that and answering some questions, we're going to get back into another practice, bringing those things into the forefront, bringing those building blocks with us. So that's our agenda for today, is really to get a sense of these building blocks and then really feel ourselves more, feel ourselves and feel each other more. And of course, it's all in the context of this year that we're coming off of, COVID not being over. I know for me, I'm in a lot of questions now around what are the boundaries now that some folks are vaccinated and some folks aren't. And it's actually, for me, bringing up a lot of uncertainty because I had a set of rules that felt clear, and now the rules feel a little murkier. And then, of course, we see what's happening in Southeast Asia, and we see that on a global scale, this pandemic is still very much alive. And the racial and economic impacts of it are very real and still very much with us. And that's on top of other things that are happening here in the US as well. So just want to name that we always practice in the context of what is actually happening, and that whatever is up for you this morning, whether it's a lot of joy and maybe you just came off of a morning workout and I really envy you if that's the case, or maybe it's some grief and sadness in your own personal life or because of what's happening globally, that we get to be with all of that and be together. So let's practice. And to practice, you can, of course, do it sitting if that works best for you. And I'll be sure to cue both sitting and standing. I'm going to stand just so I can feel more of myself, and you're welcome to join me in standing. Hopefully not going to knock over my computer in the process. Okay. Nicole, how's that? Can you see enough of me? Great. And can you hear me? It's good. Awesome. Okay. So just take a moment, whether you're seated or standing, to take your eyes off the screen. And before we even get into centering, we just want to start with sensation. And this is going to be something I'm going to come back to in a bit when we talk about somatic awareness. And just noticing sensation. we're really starting with noticing what is before we try to transition anything. And so what do I mean by sensation? A really good place to start is, do you feel anywhere that's warm? Maybe your armpits are a little sweaty, palms of your hands. Is there any place that's cool? If you've ever been to our dojo, I can really imagine the feeling of the cool mat under my feet in the morning. But just noticing sensation for you now. You can also check, is there anywhere that feels a little tight? Is there anywhere that feels loose? And then is there anywhere where there's some movement, maybe some streaming, tingling, finger twitching? And then where does it feel still? And then as we move to the practice of centering, always want to get grounded in the purpose here. And the purpose of centering is to feel more open and more present and connected. So it's not prescriptive. It's not saying, oh, I'm going to center and I'm going to feel happy, or I'm going to center and I'm going to feel calm. That may be so, that may be what happens. But we can also center and feel angry. We can center and feel sad. We can also center and feel joy and sadness at the same time. So just going in, making space for whatever you're showing up with today. And then place a hand at your belly, below your belly button. So you can put your thumb in your belly button and just feel the weight of that hand. And take a few breaths here, dropping your attention and your focus down to your belly, down to this place of literal center in our bodies. And see if you can feel, like put yourself inside your belly and feel the weight of that hand, the warmth of that hand. And now put your attention in your hand and feel the belly rising and falling. And then letting the hand go. We're going to center in length and width and depth and what we care about. So starting with length, from that place of center, you can actually drop down. So feeling your feet, letting your knees be soft. Imagining gravity actually having more of your weight. And then lengthening up from that solid ground. Breathing a little bit more space in between each vertebra. And as we center in our length, we center in dignity. And we get to center in our own dignity and then invite the dignity of others. Dignity of everyone else on this call. The dignity of those in your life, your day-to-day life. The dignity of all living beings. And then taking that centering in length, and we're going to center in width. And just take a moment here to wiggle a little. You can roll your shoulders, maybe stretch your jaw. I really like to move my hips side to side. And just breathe yourself into more width. So your feet are shoulder width apart. See if you can soften and get a little wider in our hips, a little wider across the chest. Can you soften your cheeks and get a little wider in your face? This is a dimension of community and connection. So we get to feel our width and our energetic and literal boundaries, and then we get to feel for others. Is there a place where you want to be more permeable in your life? Is there a relationship where you want to have more boundaries? Breathing into your width, practicing with width is a great way to experiment with boundaries and permeability. And feeling for each other here. And then we center in depth. So you can also rock backwards and forwards on your feet. Maybe even taking a moment to lean back and a moment to lean forward and just finding that center line where you're really balanced front and back. And you can feel, if you're clenching your butt, you can unclench it. You can feel for your lower back and your upper back. And as we connect with our back and the back of our bodies, we connect with our history and our lineage. All of those who've come before us, our teachers. We also connect with our own wisdom and lived experience. So we each bring with our lived experience now this past year. What have you been learning? And then moving to the front side of the body, feeling those strong legs and soft belly and chest. Take a breath into your belly, see if you can release it even more. Maybe 10% more. And as we feel the front side of our body, we feel what we're moving towards. We connect with what we're inviting more of into our lives. So if you have a commitment, a declaration that we talk about in this lineage, you can speak that to yourself. And if you're new or you're developing a new commitment, you can connect with what do you care about? Who do you love? And let yourself really be filled by that, filled by what you care about, filled in these dimensions of length, width, and depth by who you love. And then let's put our left foot forward. And if this is your first time, we're going to do a practice called rowing. Really just invite you to be a curious learner. And as you've got your left foot forward, bend that left knee, back leg is straight. Both feet are solidly on the ground. And let yourself drop into your pelvic bowl. So you're centered here. You're centered. You're letting gravity really have your weight. And then we're going to start to move back to front from our center. And we're not going to be all together here. So if we were rowing together in the same room, part of what we will be working on is coordination. What we're really working on here today is how to center and transition, center and change, center and movement, because we don't get to just stand still and breathe all the time. So here we are, we're eyes open and we're moving front to back. Breathe in as you come forward. Exhale as you go back. And then we're going to bring in the arms. So the arms come forward and we're rowing here. Initiating the movement from your hips. See if you can feel your length, width, and depth. And go ahead and take your eyes off the screen if you're looking at it. You can look at it occasionally, of course, but really feel yourself here. And in a moment, I'm going to say and change. And when I say that, we're going to move the back foot forward and the front foot back. And the timing might be a little bit off from where you are in your stroke, and that's okay. You'll just get back into it. And change. Staying dropped down, feeling gravity in the transitions of life. And change. And yes, you can do this seated. I apologize, I didn't say that. But if you're seated, you're just moving in your seat and switching your feet back to front. Initiating from the hips. And change. And change every time. Find your breath. Row for what you care about. Row for our global community. And hold. And just come back to standing and feel. What's sensation like in your body now? What is mood like in your body now? And then this time, let's put our right foot forward and take whatever energy you've built, whatever sensation you have. Again, totally fine to do this one seated. And go ahead and extend that up. This is our gratitude practice. And go ahead and lift your shoulders up to your ears and then drop them down. So you're extending your arms and your heart, but you're not squinching your shoulders. Extending gratitude up to the sky, to the heavens, to all that's above us. What's one thing that you're grateful for this morning from the above? And then taking that energy, extending it down, energy through the fingertips, dropping the breath down, extending gratitude to the earth. So I'm extending through a lot of floors of concrete to feel down to the earth. Extending gratitude for everything we've had to eat and drink. What's one thing that you're grateful to the earth for today? And then extending your arms out. See if you can also extend your heart as well. And extending to all people. And go ahead and speak the name of one or two people that you're extending gratitude today. And then bring that gratitude in, one hand on your chest, one hand on your belly. Take some of that love and gratitude, extend it to yourself. Unique being that you are. Unique offer that you have. What are you grateful to yourself for today? And then we'll come back together and you can go ahead and chat your mood in. Feeling blessed, peaceful, calm, connected, centered, open. Awesome. And just want to say that it's also okay if you're not feeling, these are all really awesome and positive, what we would say is sad and grateful. Yes. So just want to invite that sometimes these opening practices can actually open other things as well. Great. Less sad, more flow. Really glad to hear that. Anxious and grateful to be present. Okay, so if that was your first time doing opening practice with Strozzi, welcome. And let's get into talking about these three circles, these three components and building blocks. I'm going to ask Solunas to just share the screen and put up a visual initially. I'm just going to have it up for 2 to 3 minutes to orient us to what we're talking about, and then we'll take it away and be in more conversation. Actually, before you put it up, Solunas, I'm going to say one more thing. So pause 1 sec. Before we get into the visual, actually, let's just take a moment to say what it is, what we mean when we say embodied transformation, because the whole reason why we're going to talk about these three building blocks, which are somatic awareness, somatic practice, and somatic opening, is for the sake of embodied transformation. So when we say embodied transformation at Strozzi, what we mean is our full selves, our full body, that everything we experience in life, our moods, our actions, language, our belief systems, our actions, all of those things reside in the body, that our body is actually the domain of all of those things. And that, the word soma actually comes from Greek, it means whole self. And so we're really taking it that in order to be in alignment with what we care about most, to be moving towards what we care about most, we actually need our whole self, our whole body, all of these domains to be moving together with that same intention. I don't know how many of you have experienced this. I know I do all the time, but we have these default reactions in moments of stress. That may be a stressful moment, like what's happening on a large scale, racial justice movements or oppression that folks are experiencing, trauma that's happening at a large scale. It may also be a stressful moment with a partner or a loved one or a small person that lives in your house, right? So these stressors come with a colleague in all these different ways. And we have these automatic responses. And part of what we're getting at with embodied transformation is that if we want to change those automatic responses, we have to work with our whole being. We can't just think our way out of it. That we knowing we can do better is not the same as doing better. And so the transformation side, how we define transformation is that we can actually hold up that new response. We can embody that new habit, that new response in a stressful situation, even when the stressors come. So sorry, I said that. I didn't say that particularly well. Let me start over. So with transformation, it's that we can sustain new action even when the stressors come. And we would say the goal is about 80% of the time. So we're not expecting to be able to sustain that transformation 100% of the time, because that would be a really high bar, but we are hoping to get to the place with practice of being able to sustain it 80% of the time. So that's what we mean when we say embodied transformation, and that's what these three components are really the building blocks of. Okay, thank you, Selena. I got ahead of myself. Great. Okay. So this is what we are going to be talking about for the next little bit. You can see here these three circles, a Venn diagram: somatic awareness, somatic opening, somatic practices. And we see that there are places where they stand alone, and then two of them overlap, and then they all overlap together. So we're going to spend some time really breaking down and defining these three circles. They're then in place of this, they're held in this larger circle of social context. And so we're going to talk a little bit about what we mean by social context and how these three components of somatic awareness, somatic opening, and somatic practice are never removed from our own individual or collective social context. And then they're also in this larger circle of landscape and spirit. And so we'll talk about what those things mean and how they influence these three circles. So I just wanted you all to have this in your mind as we're talking about it, and we can definitely send it to you in a follow-up email so you'll have it. Thank you, Selena. So let's talk about somatic awareness. And we've really already spent some time in that space this morning. So when we did centering, and before we even centered, I had you check in with sensation. So temperature, movement, tightness, looseness. Sensation is our first language. It is the first language of the body. And when we think of a newborn, sensation is really how they experience the world. That's why babies want to put everything in their mouth. It's not just because they're teething, it's literally because that's how they're making sense of the world. They are sensory creatures. We are sensory creatures before anything else. And if we want to get present, the best way to get present in any moment is to check in with sensation. So even right now, can you feel your own breathing? Can you feel any sensation in your feet on the floor? So if you're in a situation where you're spending a lot of time, maybe looking over your shoulder, thinking about what you did or didn't do, feeling regret, sensation is a great way to get present. If you're spending a lot of time having a lot of anxiety about what's to come, sensation is a great way to get present. So somatic awareness, every practice that we're in, we're building our somatic awareness to some extent. We are feeling more in some way, shape, or form. So that's somatic awareness. And then we have somatic practice. So we're always in practice and we're always practicing something. So coming back to the breath, what type of breathing are you practicing right now? For myself, I'm presenting, there's a little bit more pressure. I'm working on dropping my breath, but I can feel that my breath is a little bit higher than I would like it to be. It's not as dropped in my belly. So how can I practice feeling this amount of pressure with you all and having my breath be dropped? Because that's going to actually help me feel myself more and be more present with you. So we're always practicing something. So every morning when you wake up and the first person you interact with, maybe it's a habitual person, the same person every day, maybe not, but what are you practicing in that first interaction? How are you showing up in it? We are always practicing something. So if you're living a commitment of wanting to experience or feel more joy, how are you practicing bringing that joy into various aspects of your life and into regular habitual practice? So there's some research that says for us to have the basic, muscular movements of something down, it takes 300 repetitions. So if you're learning a sport, it's going to take 300 repetitions to have the motion down of catching or throwing the basketball or kicking the soccer ball. And if you're trying to practice having hard conversations with your boss, it's going to take 300 repetitions for that to feel like a skill you really know how to do. To feel mastery, to feel like it's embodied and you don't have to prep and think about it and practice beforehand, it's going to take 3,000. So 300 to learn how to do the motion, but 3,000 to really have mastery of the motion. And so if we apply that to the things we actually want to practice, we have to practice joy really, really frequently if we want to embody joy consistently. Doesn't mean we won't also feel sadness, right? But if we want to actually have joy be this consistent thing in our lives. So practice is really important. And of course, practice community is also really important so that there can be people that we can be vulnerable with and be accountable to, which is why it's great that you all are here and in this community. And then there's somatic opening. So what we don't want to do, and what I love about Strozzi somatics, many things, is one of them, is that we really work to understand these habitual patterns that have shaped us, that are a part of us, these automatic responses that we have. We hold them in high regard. We're grateful for them. We also see their limitations, and we realize that we need to release some of that old holding in order to have new shape take form. So what we don't want to do is layer new practice, new shape on this residual holding that isn't serving us, because then we're just reinforcing it. That's just, some might call it spiritual bypass. Some people might call it repressing, right? Like we all know how to put on a happy face when we're feeling really sad. We all know how to squash an emotion and not let it be present with us. And over time, there's a huge cost to that. And however we learned to do that, we did it because it was something we needed to do, usually as a very young person. So there's no shame, there's no bad. What I also love about Strozzi somatics is that it's resilience-based. There's no shame or pathologizing of why we did what we did. There's just building the deeper understanding of our somatic awareness for how it shows up in our body and when it's happening, so that we start to have some opportunity to release it and to open and to transform. So somatic opening can look like a lot of different things. And I'll sort of cue you when we get to the practice that we're going to do together for how you can feel some opening, some very light opening. Don't worry, we're not going to do a big opening here first thing. I don't know what time it is in the day for you, but regardless. So somatic opening can really be served by somatic body work. I would say it's the sort of primary way we can get into opening, where someone literally works with our tissues and asks us probing questions to help us open and release what we might be holding. But there are tons of other ways. I mean, somatic opening could happen in a really long, luxurious hot bath. Somatic opening can happen in a tender-hearted conversation with a dear friend. Somatic opening can look like tears and huge release. It can also look like laughter. Somatic opening can also be happening very quietly while you're sitting somewhere, and it's happening on a deep, deep level, and you're maybe not expressing it a lot vocally or visually. So we don't want to put a label on what somatic opening has to be powerful and meaningful, but we do want to see it as integral to this process, so that these things are happening not in a linear fashion, but in this Venn diagram, where we're bringing more awareness, we're bringing opening, and we're bringing practice, all moving us towards what we care about. And within this social context. So the social context is so important. A lot of what we hold is related to our class, our race, our gender, our sexual orientation, our ability, our religion, our spiritual practices. All of these things are a part of how we've been shaped and a part of what we hold in our practice and how we show up. And so, for instance, for me, I'm looking a lot at how does whiteness and white privilege show up in my parenting? How have certain things been passed down into my family around whiteness, around perfectionism, around what I see in my line, at least, of a sort of stifling of joy, around how are we raising our kids to have a real lens towards building a multiracial, equitable society, even at a very early age. So we're constantly looking at how those things shape us and trying to bring more somatic awareness to that in our family. I can also speak to how I see queerness showing up in our family, or how I've experienced things as a woman in my life and how that has impacted me. So all of these things are a part of who we are, and we're constantly swimming in those waters as we navigate these three circles. There's also, of course, landscape. So I was born in New York City. I've lived in New York City almost my entire life. And yes, thank you. Solinus is showing us again these outer rings here, spirit and landscape. So we're shaped by where we live. So, I have this instinct to hurry and go quickly. And I moved to California briefly and lived in the Bay Area. And I wondered why everyone was waiting for the light to change to cross the street, because in New York, we definitely don't do that. So these are small examples, but we are deeply shaped by where we live and how people interact and what the landscape is. If you talk to Richard, Richard Strozzi Heckler, the founder of our lineage, has been so shaped by the hills of Petaluma, where he lives and where he walks every day. There's no way that we're not shaped by those things. And then we're also shaped by spirit, and we can really define that however you want. Perhaps there's a formal religion that you are a part of. Perhaps you practice spirituality in your own way. Perhaps you really connect more with nature, and nature is where it's this notion of connecting with something that is greater than ourselves. That there are forces out there greater than ourselves, and there are moments where we can really feel and connect with that power. So all of these pieces are shaping us in some way. That was a lot. It was a lot of talking. I'd love to hear any questions that you have. If you have a question, you can either put it in the chat or you can maybe do the raise hand function if you know how to do that. It's in reactions. And then raise your hand so we can try and call on someone.
Hey, Maggie. Thank you so much for everything that you're offering today. Can you hear me? I think you were muted, but I saw your yes.
Sorry, yes, I can hear you. Sorry, I muted myself for a minute to have another drink of water.
My question is
Go ahead, Nicole.
I was really intrigued when you said that we don't want to layer, my heart's beating really fast, this always happens.
That's great. Can we just stay with that for 1 second?
Yeah.
Thank you for naming that. So just go ahead and take a breath. Maybe even just place a hand on your heart. Let yourself feel yourself while you're being seen here.
Thank you.
Yeah. You want to share your question?
Yeah, so I don't know if it's going to be a very direct question or specific, but I was wondering if you could give an example of a way that you have seen a somatic pattern or a pattern in the body that basically, I was just wondering if you could speak a little bit more about somatic opening and when a pattern or a practice is layered on top of a pattern versus when you're able to identify a pattern and then create something to, if you could speak a little bit of that. Was that clear enough?
Yeah, I think I know what you're asking. So I can speak from my own experience because sometimes that I think is where I'm most grounded. So for instance, when I first came into Strozzi, I was finding that I could get really angry and really heated really fast. I had this kind of quick bullying response, this quick fight. And it was showing up in work contexts where it was not appropriate given my age and seniority in organizations. And I really came to work on that. And so you can imagine a scenario where if I didn't come to Strozzi and I didn't really work on unraveling and understanding, well, where did that come from? And where did it come from in my childhood? And how did it serve me? And why was that actually important? I mean, I remember when in my first conversations around, we call them conditioned tendencies, these reactions. In our first conversations around conditioned tendency, I kept thinking they were saying we have to get rid of these conditioned tendencies. And what I wasn't hearing was they were saying we want more choice around these conditioned tendencies. Right. So it's not, so there are moments where that anger and that I'm here to fight, I'm here to protect could actually be really warranted. Right. And I'm not looking to get rid of it forever and always, but I was finding that I was using it in circumstances that were not serving me or it was hugely disproportionate to whatever was coming at me. So I needed to open and release and let go of some of that long held anger, sadness, childhood stuff in order to actually then, in moments where things are coming at me, feel that heat rising in my chest, pause, take a few breaths and think, how do I want to respond in this situation? What's actually aligned with my beliefs and my commitments in this situation with this person who's here, right? This isn't my childhood. This isn't me having to stand up against other things. It's this person here now. And more somatic awareness is actually what helped me to do that. There's a scenario where I don't do that unraveling and where I just learn to layer niceness on top of the anger. The anger is still there. It's still eating away at me. And I'm just layering a lot of niceness on top of it or something else, right? That's what I'm just using in this example, but it feels really aligned with my gender shaping, right? Be nice, smile, appease. And so then the anger's there and it's building and it's building and it's going to come out one day in some way that doesn't serve me because I haven't done the work of actually unraveling it to then be able to really choose how I want to move forward. Does that answer your question? Great. You're welcome. Great, yes, we're trying to create more choice, very important. What does a coaching session look like? And I will talk about the relationship between sensation and emotion. That's also a great question. So coaching sessions can look very different depending on what you're trying to work on and depending on the coach. So they can really include some talking and some standing practices. So centering, gratitude, a whole host of other things. In a lot of coaching sessions, you'll find you work on, or coaching relationships, you will work on requests and declines, because the vast majority of us need help making requests and declines. Sometimes we need help receiving declines. Sometimes we need help making the decline. There may be times where the person does some somatic body work. Some coaches focus on body work, some coaches don't. It really depends. So I would say just they can encompass a lot of different things, from talking to standing practices to body work, but there's no one recipe for how each coach works. And then there are some folks who really specialize in body work, and most of their sessions are extended body work sessions. The relationship between sensation and emotions is really important, and it's really helpful to understand that sensation always comes first. So anytime you're feeling happy, joyful, angry, sad, whatever it is, the sooner you feel that and you can pause and you can backtrack and think, or not think, feel, what did I feel before I knew I was angry? What were the actual sensations that told me I was angry? So for instance, our 3-year-old has started to say, there was an instance the other day where there was someone in our house wearing a mask for the first time in a long time, a new person that we hadn't met before. And she didn't want to come out. She wanted to stay away, and that's totally fine. And she said, I felt uncomfortable. And I said, well, how did you know that you felt uncomfortable? What told you in your body that you felt uncomfortable? And she wasn't totally able to answer that yet, but that's the goal, right? Is that soon she'll be able to say, well, I knew I felt uncomfortable because my tummy didn't feel good. It felt like there were butterflies and my heart was pounding. Because then the next time you feel butterflies and your heart is pounding, you can say, is there something here that makes me uncomfortable? Maybe yes, and I want to remove myself. Or maybe no, and I want to take a few deep breaths and let my body know that it's actually okay. So the sensation is the information before we decide how we feel. But a lot of times we decide how we feel before we've even registered the sensation. I want to get us into more practice. Salonis, is there anything super pressing before we do that? Questions that you've seen?
No, I think that you got the ones in the chat. We have 2 people with their hands raised, but we can come back to you, Valentina and Karen. After.
Can you try to remember that? Okay, great. So what we're going to do is we're going to do mutual connection. And if you've ever been in the dojo, again, this will be familiar. We're certainly going to be doing it differently, because if we were together, we would be putting our hands either on each other's chests or shoulders, asking for permission and consent before doing that. And we're going to do it sort of energetically all together. So if you are the first half of the alphabet, if your first name begins with A through M, you're going to be the asker first. And then if you're the second half of the alphabet, you're going to be receiving and answering the question first. So if everyone could just get comfortable, you can do this seated or standing. You are going to need to extend your hand. So I'll show you, hid myself view, which is always a little bit awkward when you're trying to demo and practice. So standing, what it looks like is the one foot in front of the other, dropping into the pelvic bowl. So whatever side you're practicing on right now, you're with me right now. You're getting centered. You're either standing or seated. And if you're seated, sitting is a great way to really drop into your pelvis, really feel your sits bones on the chair. So find that length within depth, some breath. And in a moment, we're gonna, the askers, A through M, we're going to, so with me now, with your A through M, extending your left hand. So you're extending, you're not locking the elbow, soft. You're feeling your back, feel this back body, feeling yourself, extending energy towards the rest of folks on the call who are not extending. Maybe pick one person who you can kind of intentionally extend towards. Those of you receiving, you're going to take your hand and place the weight of it on your chest. So you're feeling the hand that's coming towards you. And let that weight help you get a little more centered and a little bit more present. Can you bring your heart a little bit more forward as you feel that hand? So somatic awareness, what sensation are you noticing right now in your body? The somatic opening is going to come when we ask the questions, and you, people with hand on your chest, let your body answer. And since you're on mute, you can say it out loud. So feeling your body, length, width, and depth, feeling your breath. Askers of the question, extending, saying this out loud. Where do you find beauty? Hand on chest, people, let your body answer. Where do you find beauty? Let that go. Askers of the question, extend your right arm. Same practice. Feel for someone that you're extending towards. Feel their chest under your hand. Feel your own back. Person who's answering the question, feel the weight of that hand on your chest. Let your body answer. Where do you find hope? Where do you find hope? Let that go and switch roles. So now, folks who received before, who answered the question before, extend your left arm, dropping into your pelvic bowl, finding your breath. And those receiving, placing that hand on your chest, yeah, you can place one hand or both hands. Feel that weight of the hand on your chest. Feel your heart opening under your hands. Person extending, ask the question, where do you find beauty? Let that go. Switching legs, switching hands. Person asking, extending the right arm from center, from a heart space. Feeling yourself, feeling for someone else on the screen. Let the body answer, where do you find hope? And letting that go. And whichever role you were just in, just letting yourself feel more of yourself. Noticing sensation now. What is it like to feel more of your connection to beauty? What is it like to feel more of your connection to hope? What is it like to be in community as others feel those things? And then coming back together. So again, you could really do this. So actually, before I say a lot, go ahead and put, if there's anything you want to share, maybe a mood, a reflection, you can put that in the chat. And then just to say that we could walk this line back with any practice, but what we were really doing there is feeling somatic awareness. So feeling more of ourselves, sensation, practicing feeling ourselves while also extending our energy, which we have to do. We have to extend our energy so much of the time. And then we were in practice with a lot of intention, and we were opening because we were having an open-hearted, vulnerable conversation. Even if with just ourselves, we were here bearing witness to each other and really speaking from our hearts. And that is opening and revealing. Great. So Lunas, I think we probably have time for at least one or maybe two more questions. Do you want to?
Sure, we have Valentina who raised her hand, but lowered it, and Karen has already exited the call. Valentina, do you still have a question? There she is. I'm going to invite you off mute.
Hi, all. Hi, Maggie. Thank you, Salonis, for helping us with the technical side. And thank you, Maggie, for sharing so much. It's been an invaluable session. So thank you for your energy and just your sharing and generosity. And thank you to everybody who sent out the question. I felt it, and thank you. I wanted to check in because something that came up for me was this tension between knowing how important this somatic work is and the shame I feel around being interested in it, believing in it, feeling it, dedicating time to it, bringing it into my practice. And I was wondering if you could share a little bit about navigating that tension socially, I guess.
Yeah, it's funny. I've been a closeted somatic person for a long time. I had a job and then I could do this on the side and choose when to reveal it. And now I'm entering a part of my life where emails are going out with me as a lead teacher, and this is my gig. This is it. This is all I have to talk about at cocktail hour, whenever that happens. So I feel you. Thank you for naming that. And I'm just wondering, where do you feel that in your body when you name it?
I think I feel it in my throat.
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm. Like a little bit of a tightening, and this made me realize that the whole shame thing is like a thing that I carry and that I've been working through. But now that I'm stepping into this world in like a meaningful way, it's sort of like showing up very.
Yeah, I mean, shame is incredibly powerful. We all experience it at some point in some ways, and it can have a really tight grip on us. And I would, if we had more time, I would want to really spend some time working, ask for your consent and spend some time working with you a little bit one-on-one. I mean, in this context, I would spend some time coaching you. And I just feel aware that we're sort of nearing completion. And so I don't want to dive in too deep. But I will say the number one thing with shame, we often call it backwash here, is this notion that I share, I open, I reveal, and then it snaps back like a rubber band. And I feel automatic regret for what I said. I said too much. I said not enough. Why did I do that? Why did I cry? Whatever it is. The most important thing to do when that backlash comes is to talk to someone outside of your own head. It's just imperative that you contact someone other than yourself. So in this context, I would say, who are your mentors? Who are two people who have walked this path, who you can have some foundational conversations with to say, this is what I care about. This is what I'm doing. This is why this matters to me. This is why I feel I cannot walk a different path. This must happen for me, for my joy, for my impact on the world, whatever it is. Will you support me? Will you be my committed listeners in this path, in this process? And maybe you check in weekly, or maybe they're on a I call you when I need you thing. But it's like, who are the people you can text when the shame comes? Or who are the people you can text before you're going to do something revealing and say, I'm about to do this new thing. It feels a little big and scary. Can I check in with you after? So they're already thinking about you before you even step in.
That's really helpful. Thank you.
So how does that sound to you?
That sounds very doable, actually. So I appreciate the fact that it feels doable and it's less like daunting all of a sudden.
Mm-hmm. And then I would just say, like, there's probably some really beautiful and deeply healing work to be done around everything that's coming up in your throat.
Thank you. And thanks everyone for sending messages in the chat. I appreciate it. Thank you, Maggie.
You're welcome. Thank you. Thank you, everyone. It's been really great to practice with all of you. Solunas, I believe you have some exciting courses to tell us about.
I do. I've been putting them into the chat. We still have space for our Embodied Transformation course, which is in person in Petaluma, May 20th through the 23rd. There are actually 2 more seats. So if you're really interested in joining us in person, I would say click that link and enroll. We also have Maggie as one of our co-teachers who is teaching our online foundations course that's starting May 25th. And there will be a question. I believe, Maggie, are you on the Q&A today? I'm not sure.
I think Stacy's going to be doing the Q&A on her own, but Stacy and I will be co-leading this course from May 25th to August 3rd. It would be amazing to have some of you in that. We're really going to be putting an emphasis on practice and getting into practice together. And there will also be coaching circles, which is amazing, amazing opportunity. So I know you're going to talk about that more, Solunas, but just wanted to make the plug and say, please join us.
Yeah, fantastic. That's exactly right. Coaching circles, as well as an introduction to our lineage of somatics. Also, which is really relevant to what Maggie was leading us through today around conditioned tendencies and shaping, is our Embodied Leadership Level 2 course, which we're bringing back. And that will be in June 10th through the 13th. Now, you will have to have completed either Embodied Leadership or Embodied Transformation before joining this course, but it does go far deeper into our sites of shaping, social context, emotional autobiography, and conditioned tendencies. So there's so much more to discover inside of our lineage of somatics, and I would encourage you all to dive deeper into that course. Anything else, Maggie?
No, there are some questions about the courses. Solunas is the primary person to reach out to and ask those of. Would love for you to join me and Stacy in these coming weeks. And then it's 8 weeks of live courses in the evenings, which you can obviously watch recordings of if you miss it, and then 4 weeks of coaching circles spaced out between that. And the coaching groups are usually 6 to 8 folks, so you get some good attention there. And just want to say thank you. It was really amazing to practice with you all this morning and to feel you through the screen, and look forward to seeing more of you moving forward. So take care.